Morning, Bear.
Morning, Sam. How are you?
Feeling strange. Pretty good.
Strange.
I'm having more senior moments lately.
Oh, welcome to the club, sir.
I told you I got about a year, maybe two ago, I forget exactly when. I got these little small computers, Intel NUCs.
Yeah.
And so now when I travel, I just take my NUCs with me because they're so small. They're actually easier to transport than laptops.
Mm-hmm.
So I took them to Hawaii. I tried plugging in my Windows one. It wouldn't boot. Sat there for 20, 30 minutes, didn't boot. So I thought, geez, what happened during transit, So I plugged in my Linux box, booted right away. So I used my Linux box the entire time I was in Hawaii.
So does your NUC work out your home?
Well, before I traveled, both were definitely working. So I just unplugged them, stuck them in my laptop, not in my bag, and left. So anyway, this morning was the first time I had to try and debug what was the problem with my Windows machine, right?
Right.
So I opened it up. I look in there. I said, why is the disk drive missing?
Sam, here is a reminder.
So I said, what's going on? Let me at least plug it into the screen and see if it's going to give me any diagnostics. And, I might just put another disk drive in there.
Sam,
why would it be missing? So I plugged it into my screen normally upstairs because my downstairs machine where I'm using right now is my Linux machine, and upstairs is where I have my Windows machine. So I plugged it in, I got distracted by other things. Turns out 45 minutes later, it actually boots into Windows. So I said, the disk drive was probably in a different slot than where I was looking. So it was still there. I had just missed it because I was looking in the wrong place. That was a senior moment. However, it still doesn't explain why it takes 45 minutes to boot Windows.
The only thing I can think of is that if you have done a hard shutdown, not a soft shutdown,
Yep.
It will check the drive for consistency and won't present any diagnostic that it's doing that. And I've noticed before, if I had a hard shutdown, that it takes a long time before anything appears. It's doing a disk check.
Yes. Now, Linux at least tells you that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
Windows, it would be nice to tell you what it's doing. Now,
Yeah.
if it's in graphics mode, it'll tell you. Like, for example, I checked in on it after it was booting. Now it says 7%. So it's actually doing some system update, but it's been going for quite a while.
Yeah. Sometimes if you hit the escape key, it will switch out of the graphics frame to the diagnostic frame, and then you can see, the gibberish that it's going through a self-check.
Yeah.
So sometimes the escape key will toggle you back and forth, or the F1 key will toggle you back and forth between the graphics interface and the other one. When I turned on one of my Gigabyte motherboard yesterday, it took a long time to come up. And Windows does that when it's the middle of an update, especially if you turn it off when it's doing an offline update.
Yep.
You can end up in the very, very strange modes.
It warns you, do not turn this off and make sure you're still plugged in and don't do anything.
And do a true shutdown, not a go to sleep, but a real shutdown to make sure it really finishes shutting down. And it's not in the middle of some update that's taking a long time, or you will end up with these, takes a long time for it to come back to a normal mode.
Yep. So anyway, I had a senior moment.
Well, I have enough machines that I have that a lot.
But still, it doesn't explain why it took, over 20 minutes before I gave up in Hawaii, and now over literally 45 minutes before it booted this morning.
Yeah, well, that would be my first guess, is that it was stuck in the middle of an update, and it had to check the hard drive and then get to a stable state, so that it could resume either from the previous version or a partial update.
Yep.
Linux is better at dealing with partial updates with a power off than Windows. Windows warns you, do not power off in the middle of this update or all hell will break loose.
Yep. Yep. Which is still not smart.
No,
They ought to do something smarter.
yeah.
But we've been waiting decades for Windows to get smarter.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to catch up with Linux or Apple in my lifetime.
No, but wasn't there at some point some rumor that the next Microsoft OS might actually be based on Linux?
Yeah, I've seen that that suggestion. It's definitely beginning to embrace Linux. There is the Linux shell or the Unix shell. That's
Yeah, the
now
Windows
available.
mode, or what do they call it? Well, subsystem. They call it the Linux
Windows Linux subsystem,
Yeah.
WSL, or WLS, or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it kind of works. It's kind of compatible, but it's bleeping slow, and
No,
goes through
but,
more layers.
but it won't surprise me if they switch over to the Linux kernel at some point instead of their own, because that's really an NT kernel they're still using. NT goes back to what, the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, I know. New technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you saw my note about Stacy calling Stacia,
Yes, I did.
letting Stacia call me.
Yeah, but you didn't provide any details of the content of that conversation. And we are recording, so I don't know if you want to.
Right. So I'm not going to do that now.
Yeah.
I'm looking through my notes to see what it is that I had stacked up to talk about. By the way, did I tell you about my expansion of responsibilities at work recently?
Yeah, you said your boss left and you've been given the responsibility of handling his area as well as your own, something like that.
My ex-boss,
Your ex-boss.
the ex-SVP of products. So in a fascinating turn of events, I am now applying the entire RFC process at the company now.
Wow.
So I'm basically saying to the CEO, hey, if we change the culture, we will do products differently. And so I've just taken the initiative to try and do certain things to change the culture. Like, for example, what a milestone means. Dates used to just be flung around, tossed around like crazy, and then people get to the date and then say, well, I expected this, I expected that. So I am now very, very clear that any date means nothing unless it comes with done criteria.
Yeah.
Easily and objectively verifiable by any reasonably intelligent third party.
Yeah. You need criteria for determining if a milestone has been met.
Dates mean nothing without done criteria.
Yeah.
But then that's for projections. If you're saying you're done, then you got to make sure those done criteria are done, plus whatever caveats you want to make on, whatever's outstanding.
Yeah.
So, things like that are things I'm trying to inject into the culture change.
Yeah.
That's about one out of, a zillion things I'm trying to do there. So, Josh, how you do?
Let's see if Joshua's got.
I'm good. I'm going to be listening for a little bit, but I'm here. I'm good.
Yeah.
How's
Sounds like
everyone
you
doing?
just woke up.
Yeah, I just woke up.
Yeah. You have the I just woke up voice.
Yep, I'm not even awake.
Mhm. So, Barry, I know ethics is a favorite topic of yours.
Yep.
I have on my list here the Lakota Code of Ethics.
Lakota?
Lakota.
Oh, Lakota. Yeah, the Native American,
Yes.
Midwestern Native American. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is the actual one, but this one is a list of 20 items included here. So I thought that might be interesting to discuss, since we haven't talked about ethics in quite a while.
Yeah.
Let me paste the link to your to the chat here, just so you can do this. Oh, let me turn on live transcripts. Okay, there we go. And let me put the link to the Lakota Code of Ethics in here. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm on my kitchen machine, so I don't have a second monitor this morning.
Okay, see if this gets you anywhere, that link right there.
Alrighty.
Oh yeah, I think it works. Yeah.
Lakota Code of Ethics by Bob Tawabi, is that his name?
Don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Okay, hang
By the
on.
way, take a look at the date, November 2020. I've had this in my list of possible topics since about that time. So
I need to give Heiner the link. He doesn't know how to find it, so I just have to copy the link and paste it into the request from Heiner first.
okay,
There you go, Heiner.
thank you. Computer, cancel.
8 a.m. alarm stopped on Samuel's third Echo Flex.
Okay, good.
Lakota Code of Ethics. Rise with the sun to pray, pray alone, pray often. I tend to use meditate as a more secular term for pray, but it sort of means the same thing. Let's see. Did you?
I agree.
There's Heiner. You let him in. Oh, here's Stacy too.
Yep.
Everybody's showing up now.
Yeah.
Hi.
I'm just going to be off camera while I eat for a little bit.
Okay. Bon appetit.
What's for breakfast, Stacy?
Tuna fish on an English muffin.
Ah,
Yummy.
good. Sounds good. And Heiner, haven't seen you in a while. All right. Anyway, Barry and I were just talking about the Lakota Code of Ethics.
How to Lakota teacher.
Really?
Wait, what did you say, Stacy?
I had a Lakota teacher.
Oh, excellent. Maybe you could lead us through the discussion of the Lakota Code of Ethics.
No, I can't lead. I absorb it, but it's for me. I take the parts I need. Thank you.
You know, I was mentioning to Barry that the date of this link that I sent is from November 2020. So it's been on my backlog of topics to possibly address here for almost 2 years. Year and a half anyway. So I wanted to see if this was interesting. Hey, it looks like there's a limit to how much you can paste in, Barry. I only see the front of item number 8 and nothing beyond that.
Yeah, the chat on Zoom only allows a limited number of characters. So you have to break long passages into sections that I don't know what the limit is, maybe 512 characters or something of that range.
Yeah. So that's one possible thing that I thought was of interest.
Yep.
Another one is this thing called the Epicurean God paradox.
Not familiar with that.
This is evil exists.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the question goes, can God prevent evil?
I think the theological answer is no, because we have free will, and free will allows us to do stupid things, which include things which are harmful to others.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the theological perspective.
Right.
And I think I tend to agree with that.
And if no, then you go to the, then God is not all powerful conclusion.
Well, there's a very interesting piece of writing by the well-known, well, maybe not that well-known, but the late Raymond Smullyan, who was a professor of philosophy and logic, American philosopher and logic. He was considered one of the great mathematical thinkers as well, even though logic is generally thought of as just a side branch of mathematics. But he wrote a fabulous dialogue. And the dialogue only had 2 characters, mortal and God. And the whole point of this dialogue is how it comes to be that mortal has free will. It's a fabulous dialogue. And I've got it up on my website for those who would like to read it. It's not a short read. It probably takes 15 or 20 minutes to read it, but it's very interesting, very well written, full of insights, and quite logical. It's a very nice conversation in which the deity explains to the mortal why it comes to pass that the mortal has free will. And it's all about whether you have the opportunity to hurt people and the opportunity to avoid hurting people, and how hard it is to fulfill the desire to not be harmful to other people, why that's so difficult and yet essential in the way things are in the cosmos and in human civilization and in the animal world as well. I highly recommend it. Anything by Raymond Smullyan is really eye-opening, insightful. He's also best known for his logic puzzles, in particular the knights and knaves puzzles, where you meet people, some of whom always tell the truth and some of whom always lie. The knights always tell the truth and the knaves always lie. And using meta logic, you can determine the ground truth, even if you can't necessarily decide which one is the knight and which one's the knave. It's a really interesting set of logic puzzles that sort of goes with epistemology. How do you get to the ground truth when you can't be sure who's a reliable source and who isn't? It's not at all obvious that you can do that, but these puzzles reveal that you can, and that you can become adept at meta logic.
I think that's fascinating. I think that there's also a lot that can be done before you have to go through such hoops. Just looking at the actual content of the plane and its basis.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in some cases, you can tell that a set of assertions are mutually inconsistent, mutually contradictory, in which case you can determine that the logic of it is screwed up.
Right.
If everything's consistent, it can still be incorrect. So stage one is everything parsable, has unique meaning, and is mutually consistent. And if that fails, then you can kind of discard the whole line of reasoning. That's the reductio ad absurdum method of disproving something, that an assertion leads to a logical incorrect contradiction, logical contradiction.
Yeah, I know.
But when you don't have a contradiction, then you can still sometimes do it. It's just a little bit more subtle. Not very many people delve into these kinds of things. There's a little demographic that loves logic puzzles and meta logic puzzles, and I'm sort of part of that community that loves paradoxes and logic puzzles. I'm not that good at them. The people who are really good at them are posting things on YouTube of solving logic puzzles, and most of the time it just knocks my socks off how their precision thinking is so much better than I could have come up with.
You see the standard questions posed by Marilyn Vos-Savant.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Stacey has her hand up. Let's see.
Yeah, so this is my favorite topic, if you don't already know that. So when Sam first asked the question about, I forgot how he phrased it, but if there is evil, how can God, whatever, I put in the chat, how can we even answer that without first deciding what God is?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so I want to go on and say that the top 5 physicists believe that there's no such thing as free will. Now, there was one video going around with the top 4 physicists, and then Barry sent a lot. What's that woman's name? Sabine something?
Hofsender. I can't remember how to pronounce her last name. She's a German presenter of hard physics presentations. Hassenfender or something like that. Yeah.
She's got a series of YouTube videos, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she's on YouTube every week.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really disappointing to me, though, when I see them, the 4 come out and her opinion isn't there. So I'm just adding that. But I want to say that, so the top physicists, people that should know, believe that there's no such thing as free will, which makes total sense to me. I believe that too, but I believe that there's freedom within boundaries. So The reason I came on a few weeks ago and I said, you know what? I see what's lacking is this religion. I feel like I have a mental model for a religion that works. I want to do this. And interestingly enough, Barry, I watched the OGM call that I wasn't on, and they were talking, somebody should start a religion. Somebody should do this.
I saw
And
that.
yeah. And so, yes, so I just wanted to put that out there because I do think there are answers. I just think that the hardest thing that I had to learn for myself in this system, which is so counterintuitive, and then I had to figure out how to remember it, is in order for our system to win, we have to be willing to lose. And that was so hard to remember.
Yeah.
Sam, you're muted.
Yeah. I just put it in the chat. One of the books on my bookshelf that came out maybe 30 years ago by the American philosopher Dan Dennett. He wrote a book called Elbow Room, The Varieties of Free Will Worth Wanting. And it partly draws on feedback control theory as sort of the underlying mathematic. And he talks about not only that there is free will, but there are kinds of free wills that you really want. The free will that allows you to steer clear of an obstacle and avoid an accident. So the ability to steer around an obstacle, that's a kind of free will. For control, that's useful of, avoid collisions. And that makes sense to me. If you didn't have free will, and if you're riding on an asteroid is going to hit the Earth, you've got no choice. You're on that asteroid, and the asteroid is going to hit the Earth, and you can't steer it. If you had even a can of hairspray, you could spray the hairspray sideways and deflect the path of the asteroid. And if you did that early enough, you could deflect it so that it would go around the Earth instead of hitting it head on. And I actually wrote a kind of funny little piece about that notion of steering something to avoid a collision. That's a variety of free will worth wanting. If I had the little can of hairspray, I would certainly expend it to deflect my path to avoid a collision.
Would you though?
Well, if I was in that position, yes.
Anyway, I wanted to ask Stacy about your loss question. I didn't understand the question.
Which question?
Is it actually loss that we need to suffer for us all to win?
No. I didn't say that that's not what I said. What I said is that we have to approach things with the mindset of it's okay to lose. So let me give you an example. What I see people doing, whether they recognize it or not, is making sure there's a place for themselves. So I even noticed myself, when we have a great idea, sometimes we don't want to share it. Somebody will steal it from us. And at one point, maybe last year, I realized, but if they steal it and it's for the betterment of the world, then isn't that worth it? And that's a hard switch to make in your head.
But is that
I know
really
it's
a loss?
Excuse me?
Is
I
that
didn't
really
say
a
it was
loss?
loss. You said it's loss. I said the question that I would ask a person that would give me information, wouldn't give anybody else information, would give me what I need. I would want them to think about and answer, how hard would it be for you to be able to lose in order for the rest of the world to win?
So it is a loss.
Well, did Christ lose?
That's the example that comes to mind. Socrates, Galileo, Christ are people who lost, but in the act of losing, they publicized the episode so that the general public would win, would learn. So that they were the sacrificial lamb, as to use the
So did they lose?
term.
So
Sorry.
in the end, did they actually lose?
They lost life. Yes.
They
did.
lost their mortal coil, but the culture won the insight.
I don't think the culture won the insight. So
Well, that was the objective. I mean, I benefited from if Socrates had run away, which his friends were urging him to do, we would not have learned what Socrates was teaching because it would have been lost. So I learned what Socrates taught. I learned what Galileo taught. And I would not have learned it if they had been put down.
This is true, but one of the things that I'm learning, and it's coming from the perspective of a mother, and this has been a hard one. Sometimes you just have to let people learn for themselves.
Yeah,
And
but think about it. Think about it, Stacy. Archimedes, who was the first engineer, pioneered the discovery of the mathematics that we today call the calculus. And he wrote it down, but it was lost. It was rediscovered about 100 years ago in some obscure library. And then we had to wait for Newton and Leibniz, two more geniuses, to rediscover the mathematics, or redevelop the mathematics of the calculus. So asking people to learn for themselves, when it comes to things like a lot of science and math, there is a very, very small number of world-class geniuses who have the opportunity and the faculty to not only develop it, but to publish it and make it available to the general public. And you can see how often great wisdom was created and the person was put down and it was lost. Sometimes it was rediscovered, 1,000 years later. I can give you others examples of things that were lost for, millennia. And then somebody found some, archaeological piece of evidence that, oh, here's the same thing that some obscure guy came up with. But who else would come up with it? Certainly not me.
You posted a really interesting, really cute creation story from the Orenda project, I think from 2015.
Even earlier. I wrote it in 1999. I only posted on Facebook, long after.
And I actually read the whole thing and I loved it. I especially liked your use of the word time, because that was something that I had done as well for my own reasons. But anyway, but you talked when the creator talked about why the fawn did something, I wanted to say there were at least 3 other reasons why that could have been.
Sure.
And again, I was not raised with any religion. So and I think that's been a blessing, because I don't have a lot of these indoctrinations that other people have. So going back to the free will and all that, I believe that we do not have free will, but I do believe that if I think I'm my own creator, then I'm pulling the strings. So how do I explain that? My way will work for me. It won't work for somebody else. It will just work for me. And what I know, because people have shared with me, is Christ said, the journey to God is the journey within. So when you talk about, but then other people won't learn, that's not my business. And as much as it would pain me to see other people in pain and not learning, that's what I think it might take.
Yeah. What pains me is people in power who haven't learned how to use their power ethically. There's a lot of people in power who are, bogus. They ought not to be in power because they don't know what they're doing. And my challenge is, how do you speak the truth to power so that you don't get kiboshed and they get enlightened? And that's nigh impossible. I'm not saying impossible, it's just that I haven't really found a reliable method of enlightening the unenlightened who are clinging on to power. I mean, look at Trump trying to cling on to power, and he's about the most unenlightened public figure we know of.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. That Marianne Williamson has that quote, like, we're afraid of our greatness. And I'm realizing it's not that we're afraid of our greatness. Other people are afraid of it. So we stay small so that we don't scare other people. And when you say it's nearly impossible, that's probably true. But there's a but. I wish I had this. I found this paper that I had scrunched up. It was like from 13 years ago. And it was this physicist, Rudy something. He co-wrote a book with Deepak Chopra. And it was about the brain. And it was about something like the user's manual. And I wrote it down because he specifically talked about our karma being encoded in our DNA and how we were evolving and how groups were finding each other. And I'm paraphrasing it really badly, but when I first found my way to Facebook in 2013, intuitively, I was like, this is how they're doing it. And I think that's what's happening. I mean, the people that I've met on GCC or Open Global Mind or all those people, how would I have ever met them in real life?
You wouldn't.
I wouldn't have.
You and I wouldn't have met in real life. No way. Or
Well,
Sam,
that was Bashir.
or Heiner, or everybody here on Facebook, I would never have met them in real life. Joshua almost, because he was at the Science Museum, but he was there before I was, so we didn't overlap. Otherwise, we might have met in real life.
So Barry, I just want to say one more thing and then I'm going to be quiet, because the biggest issue that I personally have is I think most people are still operating under this paradigm, this patriarchal paradigm, is that we take care of the children as if the children are lesser beings, or as if the animals are lesser beings. And I'm somebody, I want to know what I'm getting into. I feel like I have the right to know. And so if someone is leading me into a situation, even though they think it's for my own good, that's not going to get a good reaction from me. And that's not the way I think we should move forward, because to me, that's repeating everything that's been done wrong before, keeping like, secret knowledge. Yes, you should have to earn your way, but there's not one traditional way to earn it.
Is mathematics secret knowledge?
No, and I think like I said, I can't do math, but I have a really good mind for math, not in the traditional way. Like I could never show my work, but I could always find the answer.
But how would you know the answer is correct unless you submitted it to somebody who could discover if there is an error in it, reveal it to you?
Because I could reverse engineer it. I could get to the answer and then I could break it down and see if then I could do it. Once I got the answer, then I could prove that it works. I just couldn't get it traditionally.
Have you ever thought you had the answer and tried it and it turned out it didn't work?
Yeah, but then I knew I was wrong and I had to go back all the way to the beginning.
Right.
But that's
So
what, that's
the
why I
point.
take things. Yeah, but that's my point. I take things in such small steps. That's why I put the question up, because I didn't think you should have continued that conversation until you define that question. I take things in small steps, so I only have to go back one step. I don't have to go back 100 steps and figure out where the mistake was.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of very carefully crafted mathematics that had a very obscure mistake buried in the middle that was very hard to find.
Let me ask you a question. How many of you in your real life, well, I don't know how many of you are married, but if you ask most people, like most men, how much could they have really accomplished without the women in their life? Most of them would say, yeah, I had to count on my mom or my sister or my family. So when I look at history and I don't see those women there, there might be a piece that got left out. And I feel that really strongly because I feel like it's happened with me. I mean, as an example, I noticed you put in that chat that I haven't been following. I'm sorry, when something hits my eye though, I follow it. But you put in the work that had been done in PKE in 2019. And I don't know if you noticed this, but everybody was mapped except for me. I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either.
That's not the point. The point was I played an integral role.
Oh, well, okay. I didn't even know what PKA stood for. I think it took me 3 or 4 tries to discover that it was the shorthand for Practical Knowledge Ecology, which was a private group that I couldn't even find if I knew the name because I wasn't a member and it was a private group.
And how did you find out about it?
Because
Hello, I can answer that for you. You found out about it through me.
You used the initials PKE, and then because I didn't know what it stood for, I went looking around for what it meant, what it stood for, and I eventually found it, I think because it was on Mattermost or maybe Facebook Messenger that I found a reference to PKE that I could then map to the true name. And then I could discover that it was a Facebook group that is not public.
Right. That
But it took-
begged. I had literally begged, and Joshua was there, so he might remember. I was like, please let me have a Facebook group. Let me just keep the Facebook group there. Please, 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 please.
Yeah. It's really hard to decode some of these abbreviations because so many things, like even on Facebook, you have these private little groups, and if you don't know that they exist and you don't know their name and nobody's ever mentioned them in public, these are just references that are free floating and have no meaning. I have this all the time.
You wrote in the chat, look up Emmy Noether. Who's Emmy Noether?
I wrote this when you said about women being ignored. Emmy Noether is a woman who proved a very powerful mathematical theorem in physics that without which we wouldn't have modern physics. And what she proved was that two very important ideas in physics is conservation laws, something that's invariant no matter what happens, like conservation of energy, for example. And then another idea is symmetry. The two things are symmetrical. She proved that symmetry and conservation laws go together. And
Yes.
she came up with a theorem relating conservation laws to symmetry. And that was a very powerful development. And she's the only person who was able to articulate and prove that theorem. But it's very powerful. Now,
And yet I know that. And yet that's what I'm telling you. I know that's true. So I'm never going to read that. and I don't want to, but I know that's true. Just from experimenting and watching just from playing and trying different things.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So Rosalind Franklin is another unsung hero, the woman who did the calculation on, I think it was the Apollo program, one of the space programs. You know, the women who did the calculations of the orbital mechanics. There are a lot of women who are unsung, whose contributions are very important.
But don't you see that if we don't solve for why they're being left out, that we're never going to change the system we're in?
Male ego is the reason why. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Male ego is the reason they're left out.
Well, that's obvious to you, but a lot of men would not agree with that.
Probably most men don't agree with me on most things that I talk about. I think I have more female followers than male followers on the idiosyncratic things that I propose.
That would make sense. I'm going to finish my eating. I was just drawn back. Come back, Sam. We want to hear what you have to say.
I was going to look up that link to the Raymond Smullyan essay on free will. I just have to find it.
This thing took several clicks before it get off of mute and stop video. Anyway, on this whole issue of secret knowledge, you know, there is a model, and it's a teaching model that may play here, okay? And I often use martial arts as an exemplar. Now, I'll be clear, martial arts is not everybody is equal. Martial arts definitely is a domain where there are people who know some skills and people who do not know some skills. But in the sumo, which I'm not a sumo wrestler, okay? But I've heard that in the sumo culture, if you want to learn sumo, you go to the school, you commit to learning, and you spend the first 3 or 4 or 5 years sweeping the floor before they even teach you anything.
Wax on, wax off.
He only did that for a couple of weeks or days.
Because it was a movie.
I know. But the whole idea is you have to show that you're worthy of this knowledge that someone might choose to teach you. Now, in a hierarchical model, that could rankle some people. that could definitely raise some hackles. In fact, it definitely smacks of power over. But I'm not one of these people who think that you have to eliminate all of these forms of teaching simply because we all want to be equal. In martial arts, from a skills standpoint, we're not all equal. So I do think that it's kind of interesting that there are some ways to show that you are committed, that you are willing to do the work, and therefore in the eyes of the guru or master or Pangjang or Shifu or professor or whatever, that it's worth them spending the time on you, which is really what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah. I put in the chat, conscientiously disciplined.
Yeah.
When I was in grammar school, one of my report cards, the teacher had written a note that I didn't know the word, and I took it home and showed it to my mother. And the teacher had written, Barry is a very conscientious student. That was the first time I learned a polysyllabic word. And I remembered that because if the teacher wrote that down, it means that most students aren't. It's worth noting that if you have a conscientious student.
I want to just shift away from the word equal for a minute and propose that we look at it as different roles. So Stanislavski, I think he was like a major acting person. He said that there are no small roles, only small actors. And I would propose that each one of us is here for a different reason. And it's not so much that one is better or worse, but that we're all uniquely suited for different things. And I think that's an important distinction that maybe we should take a look at that might be helpful. Thank you.
I'm curious how many of you here have taken a martial art or perhaps an extended, dancing training or extended training of other kinds, branching on like 6 to 10 years.
Acting.
Acting?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So there are different levels of skills and different kinds of techniques that, wouldn't have been appropriate to teach you in your first 2 or 3 months, but needed for you to get a more solid foundation, right?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
You don't?
No.
I'm curious. So what did you learn when you were into this for several years?
What I learned is I don't like to work at things. So what I learned is that I was very talented as a child. So it worked that way, but I didn't like to push myself because I felt like I didn't want to upstage somebody else. So I wound up backing away from the acting. Like, when I asked my mother my sister had an agent. I did not. When the agent paid attention to me, I kind of like walked away because I didn't want to eat her, spotlight. When I wanted an agent, I was 10 years old. My mother said, well, here's a number. Like, I'm 10 years old. I have to do this myself. Yeah, everybody's different. I realized it's funny. It just came to me. I've been doing a lot of inner work. That's what I love to do. And I finally realized that the reason I didn't become an actress is because I don't want to follow somebody else's script.
I have a similar problem. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. I'm not good at taking direction. I tend to be an independent thinker. And if what somebody wants me to do simply doesn't make logical sense to me, I find myself incapable of carrying it out. Anne-Marie says, I'm without guile. You have to be with guile to enact a role that you don't actually genuinely believe. And I don't have that faculty. I can't pull off an acting role.
But you know what? Once I knew that about, that's what I love about you. It's so unique and rare. It's just when you don't know that, it's infuriating. Like, that's why Colin and I, like, you could make our heads explode because we didn't understand that.
If I want to tell a lie, I have to write a work of fiction and label it. This is a flight of fancy work of fiction. You know, it's just an imaginary tale, and it's not a scientific presentation of reality. It's just and I have to be very careful to label something as satire or parody or comedy or fantasy or flight of fancy or fiction, because people tend to take anything I say at face value as if it's, you know, the ground truth.
I don't. that was, but here is the thing. That was the best part about not knowing. So the biggest thing for me that I feel like I work on in this group is the power dynamics that people are not aware of. So the best part for me of being in Facebook is I didn't know who anybody was. I didn't know what their credentials were. They were just regular people, which is a good thing, which is really a good thing. So yeah, I mean, and you're always good. Like, you're one of the few men I've met that has no problem if I disagree or even correct you. Whereas every other man I've met has made me feel, how dare you have the audacity? It's been really hurtful. Very, very, very hurtful.
So I jump in and out. You see, I want to know, Barry and Stacy, when you met, I fully summarize, deeply connect with you, because it was Bertha von Suttner around the Nobel Prize. It was Mila around Einstein. But I also see other examples. So I really want to see what has misled women. But in summary, I want to say, as I have to run away now, I really love to see you, even when I'm seldomly joined you the last weeks or months, that I feel at home here. I had my 5th operation of the eye postponed, so it will be 8th of August now. So I really see that we need guidance for the blind, because they maybe be able to help us with orientation. This was my thing in the nutshell. I even didn't get your Zoom room anymore, but now I'm connected again.
Yeah, we missed you. I think it was a week or two ago that you wanted the link, and I thought I provided it to you, but then you never showed up. So might have been a misconnection there.
So when and how did you meet Stacy and Barry? And I think that I see a very deep drive in Stacy to really get this old boys on deck. I really wonder, as I see you all meandering around very interesting topics.
You muted yourself, Heiner. You just muted yourself.
Well, I forgot or didn't remember what I said before. It is all off the
Going
record.
around topics. You just said how you see us going all over around, different topics.
Yes, at all. I like it because this is a very special, deep group. And I'm very happy that Josh and you 3 or 4 even kept on trucking, even when it must have been a very hard time. And I thought you would call off all this GCC business.
It's interesting you say that, Heiner, because what's happened for me in the last week or so is something has changed in me. So I'm like, when you just said that I keep pushing the boys, I'm not pushing anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm here to visit. I'm here. I like you guys, but I'm doing, I'm living. I'm living.
I put in the chat that my recollection is that Stacy found me and opened the dialogue, but I don't recall where and how and on what. Stacy probably remembers that. She has one of these iron trap minds that can recall, event details, which I tend to be poor at.
Yeah, pretty much. I started in, I think the systems of ecology thinkers or something like that.
That's probably where you may have seen me
And,
first.
I've always, I didn't get to go to an Ivy League conversation, to an Ivy League college, but I've always loved learning. I mean, my dad didn't even graduate high school. So, for me to be in those conversations was amazing, but I didn't realize what was happening. Like there were a lot of different things going on. And sometimes, like, I'm somebody that I see patterns before they occur. And so sometimes I jump ahead, and there were a lot of mistakes I made. But yes, I met you. And then you had reached out to me to ask me my take on something that had occurred.
Oh, okay.
And then we wound up speaking more, and you asked me to read your work. And I did, because that was an opportunity, because that's where my work is. And I needed from you the framework. I didn't need the rest of it, because I actually take it in a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah.
Where you talk about puzzles, I think, I changed it to Lego, which
Okay.
is, so it was, yeah, so I was motivated. And I have to be honest with you. I remember sitting on my deck and my friend was over. And again, I didn't know the way your brain worked. So it was almost like we were both like, I don't even know. I'm very determined to let people think what they want and not correct them. Maybe it's a lack of humility on my part that I've had to learn a little bit. But I'm like, it bothers me. Like, why do I have, like, if they're going to make a stupid assumption and not come straight to me and ask me, I rather, like, I don't know, I guess I found humor in it. But but I was enjoying talking to you so much. But at one point you got really mad because you thought I was trying to get you mad, but I wasn't. I was just using your words against you. Whatever you were saying, I was just flipping it back for you to follow the letter of your word. And then we got past that somehow, because
I don't recall that, but okay.
I did. But I know you believe me. I think you believe me. It's there. We can find it.
Well, yeah, adversations tend to, what's the word? Trouble me. I don't like adversations. So somebody goes in an adversarial conversation mode, an adversational mode, that tends to make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it wasn't adversarial. It's that you would say something and I would come back with a question.
Well, that's fine. I like that.
Well, now that you know me, you liked it. But at the time, I think you thought I was being difficult.
Oh,
And in a
maybe.
way I was,
Yeah.
but because I thought it was important. And again, I had no idea how accomplished you were, which was a good thing.
Well,
for me.
most people wouldn't assume that I have a Stanford PhD in systems thinking. I mean, who does? I mean, even the guy who took in my retirement account never even heard of the discipline that was my career. So that's how rare it is.
I have to say, one of the gifts, one of the gifts is that you don't read emotions a certain way. That is what I think enables you to be as objective as you are, which is a really positive thing, because all of my friends that are similar to you, they take things also very literally, which is wonderful, but they can be taken advantage of a lot. And I think that maybe what has happened in the past.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you're a scientist, you do take things literally. And so, I mean, if you go into the arts and you study poetry and literature, a lot of metaphors, a lot of literary allusions. I didn't study the humanities. I studied engineering and mathematics and science, and everything was literal, and every term had a very precise definition. that was agreed upon among all the participants. You go into literary arts, you know, terms are very vague and metaphorical and lyrical, and, you know, what the hell does this mean? It's just, you know, it's just riffing on, you know, flights of fancy, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that things don't have literal meanings.
Josh, you there? You want to check in?
I'm here, but I can't turn my camera on, but I'm listening. I'm just listening today. I didn't really have anything, but if I can check in, I'll come in about 9:15.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm so sleepy. I'm very tired.
So that's about 20 minutes from now.
You know, I was listening to a part of a call that I missed, an Open Global Mind call, and Klaus asks, he brings up the point that some writer said something about, they were questioning whether all the answers are in nature. And I'm like, I say that in the little piece I wrote about Facebook in 2018, I say, nature has confirmed for me. So it gets frustrating sometimes because I'm like, yeah, these things are obvious, but I felt overlooked a lot of times. Like, how come nobody asked my opinion on something? Instead, they give me stuff to read.
That's me. I give people stuff to read.
Well, I asked you a little question, and I think it was insightful because I learned a lot about you. And I wonder how Stacy got me into Barry. So I think we really have a deep treasure trove to dig into. I have to run now, but I really enjoyed. And I have this with Jörg, a screening for a film where I might want to invite you to. Anyway, I really like this group, and the smaller the better. Over and out.
Good luck with your eyes. Yeah. Yeah, I just add to that. The one thing that I know for sure is that in the end, it's relationships that matter. And that is what I like about GCC. The relationships are here, and I would never give that up.
Yeah, my experience is the relationships ran the spectrum from very collaborative, which Sam would approve of, to very adversarial, which I don't approve of, but maybe other people find that amusing. I don't know.
But I will say, everyone, except for maybe you and me, did have an agenda.
Oh yeah, hobby horses.
And that was the big issue. And all I wanted to do is help everybody else reach their, I wanted to put it all together and have them be able to, that was my agenda. I had no agenda for me at that time.
You were the glue.
Right. That changes now because I realized, I learned something about me and I feel more empowered than I've been before. You didn't have an agenda. You were looking to help point out flaws in the system.
Yep.
But I can honestly say, and I know people will be insulted, but I will still, I'll stand by it. Everybody else still had something that they were pushing, whether they want to acknowledge that or not.
Yeah, I have things that I push, but I kind of wait for an opening when it's timely and appropriate to interject it. Because if I interject it at random, then it generally doesn't work. It's just off topic and people have no idea why I brought something up. But if somebody brings something up that I think I have a useful contribution, then I'll jump in. And I try to limit it to, to 10 or 15 minutes, because if I go over that, I know that I'm just going to overload people with too much content.
Right. Like
learning not to do that.
There was a man here. I don't think you were here. I don't know if you know him because I don't even know who knows who. But I remember there was a session and it was recorded. I wasn't there. It was David Boville. He had a session with Tammy. Yeah, you wouldn't have known about that.
I wasn't there then, yeah.
But but during the PKE days, I had spent a lot of time on the phone with him, a lot of time listening to him. And, anyway, but his point, which I think was an important one, is that people were not honest enough to point out what was wrong. Now, that's something that I do and I'm willing to do. It's not fun, but I understand that it's important, because if you don't have accurate data, then you can't make good decisions.
Yeah. It's very hard to reveal to somebody that their pet theory is flawed. It's often easy to see that it's flawed, but they're so wedded to it that it's sort of a fool's errand to try to reveal to them the flaw in their theory. And that's why so few people adhere to the protocols of the scientific method, because in the protocols of the scientific method, you're obliged to find every possible reason that your theory could be bogus. You're supposed to try like the Dickens to falsify it. And if after a very disciplined effort to falsify a theory, you can't find anything wrong with it, then maybe, possibly you're on the right track.
Well, and I think a bigger problem, though, what I feel is a bigger problem is people have a hard time learning from someone or something that in their mind is of a lesser stature than themselves. So
yeah.
That's a major thing. I once said that I learned from my dog and I was painted as crazy. She said but that's exactly what they did in Lassie. Dog sense energy. So if I'm looking at my dog as like double checking, that's not crazy. That's how science works.
If Marley's taking a nap, maybe the suggestion is it's time to take a nap.
or maybe this, I don't know if that's the suggestion, but maybe the suggestion is there's really nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Rest easy.
Yes.
Don't fret. Don't go running around. Just rest easy. Marley is resting easy. That's a good idea. Let's just rest easy.
But the more important point is we can learn from children.
Oh, yeah.
We can learn, and that people have a hard time with that.
What PJ learned from children and what I learned from children is how children learn. Studying how children learn is a very useful thing to do. And Piaget was sort of the first person to study how his own children learned and develop theories of learning. Montessori did the same thing, Maria Montessori. And I was very impressed with the concept of learning how the learning process works.
Yeah. And that's what I was interested in learning. Like I thought there was something that I could contribute there and learn there.
Right.
And I do now, even more.
And that was the insight, that pay attention to emotions, because emotions are clues to how the learning process is going well or not going well, or it's getting stuck. That's the first clue. It's not the answer, it's the first clue that the learning process is in some kind of difficulty.
Right. And part of my interest in that whole thing is that I noticed that people expected the people having the distress to do the compensating, when it should be the exact opposite. I see you don't know what I mean. So for example, on another call where we're talking about how can we identify if someone's in distress, and how can we know how to help them when they can't articulate it?
Right.
And what I suggested is we make it a practice that people know to drop a song that's reflecting where they are. And we look at that song as if it's a mind map, an internal mind map, because a person may not be able to get the words out.
Right. Yep. And that's an art, especially you need to have a repertoire of known songs to draw on. And as it happened, because in my younger years, I would listen to music on the radio and I knew a lot of popular music, but it was never something I studied and cataloged. But sometimes in the middle of the night, a song would come up, in my dream sleep, and I go, I'm going to use that song. But it wasn't at the spur of the moment. It took a day or two to find a song that might be helpful.
Right. Well, so I'm not going to go into it here. I don't know how much I shared it on a different call, but I recently suffered a trauma, which 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I couldn't walk my dog. I was afraid to leave my house, but I used the music therapy program that I was using for myself, and I feel better than ever.
Cool.
So I know it works because I'm here.
Well, I've had occasions where not only was I afraid to leave my house, other occasions where I fled my house because the house was too dangerous to be in. So I've had both situations. Afraid to go out in the public and afraid to stay home.
Well, actually, I was fine. I mean, I'll just share this part really briefly. I was forced to call 911 on a 19-year-old Black man who I knew from the community. I won't go into that whole thing, but I did not want to. He was threatening to beat and rape me. He was in my apartment and I couldn't get him out. And I didn't want to call because I was afraid he was going to be shot.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And at the same time, my phone was giving me lots of difficulty. So every time I would try to call, it would mute out it would mute my microphone. So what I wound up doing, yeah, I've had this before. And actually I've been talking to people and a lot of strange things have been happening with phones. But anyway, that's another story. What I wound up doing was locally, I went through Facebook Messenger and I recorded it.
Yes, I was in that very small group chat where you put in a 3-minute recording on your phone and a paragraph describing the circumstances. That was
Now,
it.
I did not send that. So that's interesting because I did not send that to your group.
It's a group that was largely idle for more than a year, but you're in the group.
Well, I don't even want to, I don't care. I don't want to, what the part that I wanted to share is I got through that fine,
Mhm.
but and I even forgot that I made the recording because I wound up being able to handle it myself. And I just flipped into, can I make you eggs? I did whatever I had to do.
Yeah,
and
you offered to make them eggs. Yeah.
It wasn't until after that, I totally forgot about the recording. It wasn't until I later heard the recording and some other events had happened
Mhm.
that I broke down. I had not processed any of that trauma. I got through that. It was after, and mostly it was because I had been reaching out to friends who were not calling me back. And as it turns out, they were not getting my messages. I was not getting their messages. And again, that's exactly what happened before. And now I'm going to get off the subject because it's getting me. I don't want to go. I really don't want to. It's upsetting.
Yeah. Well, we'll drop the subject.
Thank you. So what else is going on? I love the creation tale.
Yeah. So yeah, I wrote that in the late 90s and published it. I think I put it up on my website, maybe 1999. And then reprised it on
I got married
Facebook,
that year.
15 years later or whatever. But yeah, you had said at one point you wanted to write a creation story for a new religion. And I said, oh yeah, I've been there. I wrote a creation myth for the new age of the cyberspace culture. And it's not necessarily, not really religion, it's just a new culture, new paradigm. But yeah.
Well, but that's kind of what got me a little upset when I listened to the Open Global Mind call that I wasn't on, and I heard everybody talking about somebody needs to start a new religion. Somebody needs to do that. And I'm thinking, I'm on these calls all these time. I love these people, but here I just did that 3 weeks ago. Nobody's like asking me what I think. And it made me feel, it hadn't bothered me up until that point. It really hadn't, because I was just happy to be there. I liked everybody. But then I started to feel really undervalued. Like why am I undervaluing myself?
It's commonplace. I mean, I feel undervalued, but it's
Barry. I'm a good learner. So I'm not going to keep doing that. I'm a really good learner.
Yeah.
That's,
So
I'm a
that was- yeah.
conscientious student, just like you, Barry.
Yeah, but yeah, that was Thursday, and because I was on Mattermost, you invited me into Mattermost like a week or two ago, and that's how I discovered that OGM was on Mattermost, and that they have a Thursday call, and I learned about it because somebody mentioned it on Mattermost. So I actually joined that call Thursday morning, but I had to get off at noon because I had another call, and that woman who talked about new religion
Grace.
came on to talk about it just after I dropped off, but I did go back and watch the video when Peter, I think, is the person who posted it. So I watched it because I wanted to see the rest of the call, and that's
Grace is wonderful. Grace is awesome.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
wow,
great.
I was so excited watching that call,
Yeah.
even though I had a terrible, terrible migraine because, yeah.
But yeah, I had talked to you before about being a cult leader because I was considered a cult leader when I started that online learning community in the 90s. And I go, why are they calling me a cult leader? I'm just doing an online learning community. What the hell? What's so cultish about that? But yeah, it was a cult in the sense that it was a different educational model than the conventional one. In that regard, it was distinct from the traditional educational model. And I sort of got used to being called a cult leader. And we had a vision statement and a mission statement and social contract. And
Yeah.
so, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get off soon because I'm gonna have to get off.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Maybe-
listen in the background. Oh, go ahead.
Same here. I also have to get off. I really will call you now cult leader, Sam. No, Barry and Sam. I really enjoyed. I think we should really talk also in person one day, but also in such a group, non-recorded. I really feel lost in all these magnetic portals when people talk to each other, and it's a sub-chat in a chat, and you don't know if you talk to the group or all this. There's a lot of friction and a lot of things going on I couldn't have imagined 30 years ago. But anyway, I have to dash off as well. So Stacy, your conversation was very insightful for me. And I hope to be at least observing and listening in the
Thank you.
future. So please take care.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
We haven't seen Kayla this morning. Often she's on these calls, but doesn't seem to be here today, at least not so far.
She's also such a nugget.
She's a good soul.
I think everybody in this group is a good soul. I don't think there's one person in this group that I know of that's not a good soul. Well, that comes to the calls that I know. That hasn't, I'm not counting the people that have blocked me. I'm just,
Yeah. So, well, the world is a strange place. And, one of the things I learned is that no matter how good a soul one might be, no matter how saintly or whatever term you want, you might be, there will arise in your life an antagonist. For every protagonist on the stage, no matter how fabulous they are, sure as shooting, there's going to be an antagonist who opposes them. And I discovered that that's the reality, and it doesn't matter who or what you are in the cast of characters, they're just going to be your antagonist, and they're going to show up sure as shooting, and shooting may be what happens. So, and part of the challenge of life is how do you handle yourself when your antagonist shows up? I learned that in social networks. I learned it on Wikipedia. I learned it even in academia that, the antagonist shows up and Now what do? You find yourself in some kind of a competitive contest that you don't want to be in, some kind of a pissing contest you don't want to be in. And how the hell did I get into it? How the hell do I get out of it? It's the human condition. And so Neil Gaiman says, no matter what happens, make good art.
I try to learn from every person, and that was something that you would say over and over, and I'd roll my eyes. I'd be like, oh, he's saying it again, until it clicked.
I got it from Anne Marie, who got it because she watched Neil Gaiman give that commencement address where he says that to the art school of Philadelphia, wherever it was. And I really appreciated it. That making good art is what you do when weird things happen. You map them into good art. In my case, atrocious song parodies and comic operas, that's not good art, it's just atrocious art. But yeah, at least it's therapeutic. And maybe it makes things better, and maybe it doesn't, but at least it's therapeutic. Processes it in some constructive way.
I'd rather put my spiritual, emotional hat back on, because that's where I'm most comfortable.
Mhm.
And just share that back when Christopher Reeves was dying, I remember thinking to myself, wow, how lucky he is that he is going out like that, and who he has around him.
Yeah,
And I
right.
felt the same when I read, I don't read a lot of books, I'm very clear about that, but I read the ones that are important to me. And the short, I read directions and notices and, fine print, stuff like that. But Randy Pouch wrote The Last Lecture. He was, I don't know he was a professor somewhere.
Mhm.
And he wrote at the end of his short book, and at the end of the lecture, which is a bunch of life lessons, you find out that he's dying too. And again, I was like, how lucky. And that's where I was. So recently, when I was going through a crisis, crisis of conscience or whatever you want to call it, I realized we're all going to die.
Yep,
So
we're all mortal.
why not go out trying to save the world? Like if that's how I get remembered, so what? I believe in reincarnation anyway. So
Those are famous stories. I mean, that's the New Testament story.
Mhm.
It's an example
And
of it.
like you said all the time, it's the same patterns over and
Right.
over and over. It's not that hard to figure out.
No matter what you're going through, there's guaranteed there's a piece of literature, classic literature, that you may not be aware of, but it's out there, and somebody will say, oh, you're reliving this classical story from Greek mythology or whatever.
Yes. And I found that's what's happening to me.
Yeah.
I'm like seeing things and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know there was a play about that.
Yep.
And so I'll share. This is a good time to share this, I think. Sam's friend, Jack Park, I think, had put in a TED talk that was given by Jane McGonigal. Jane
McGonigal, yeah.
Okay. And so I watched it, and she was talking about what the she was talking about the gamer, like the mentality of the gamer and what that
Right.
ecosystem was like, and
Right.
how supportive of an environment that was. And when I was reading, and I don't play video games, but when I was listening to what she was saying, I was like, those are my superpowers. That's me. I'm like this. There's always a solution. There's a way to do this. So I got the idea that if we could bring the ecosystem within the video game world into the real world, like a hybrid, like Facebook is almost like a hybrid, that might have a positive effect.
Yep. I love that talk by Jane McGonigal. I blogged that talk when it first came to my attention. And I thought that was fabulous. And then as I mentioned, I learned she had a twin sister who was doing research on stress.
Yeah, that was amazing to me, because talk about patterns and signs, even if it's not true, if you believe it is, and it's having that effect, the same way I think the placebo effect works. If you believe it and your body is getting the message that something is true, well, then it's true for you. So for me, the fact that these were two curly redheaded women that represented different parts of my brain was like so exciting.
Yeah, turns out I'm fond of redheads. I admit it, I'm fond of redheads. And I also noticed that some of my favorite figures in comedy, in science, literature, were redheads. I thought, why are redheads overrepresented in the creative arts?
Did you come
And
up
then I developed a theory, and I don't know how to prove this theory, it's just a theory that there's a
love-
reason why redheads are prominent in the creative arts and sciences, comedy.
Will you tell me? I'm curious. I would
Yeah, in
like,
fact, I wrote a blog about it.
don't tell me the blog. Tell me in your words.
So as you know, redheads tend to burn in the sun. So we tend to stay indoors. Desk jobs, not jobs that are very outdoorsy and athletic. And also, I know about myself that I hardly ever can get an adrenaline rush, but I can get an endorphin high. A lot of people can get highs by doing things which are exciting, like jumping out of airplanes or whatever, sports. I don't get that. And I realized that it turns out that in order to get an adrenaline rush, your body has to produce adrenaline, because otherwise you can't get a surge of it if you can't produce it, right? And I did a little research that was inspired by an episode of Nova on public television. There was a breeder who was breeding animals for their pelts, and breeding, among other things, I think fox and wolves and that kind of species. And the problem is the breeders say these animals are ornery. We would like to develop these animals that are not so ornery and difficult to handle and so rambunctious. So a master breeder would breed these foxes or wolves or whatever species was, and he would always take the most docile, gentle of the litter and keep those, and the ones who were ornery and difficult, he wouldn't keep. And after six or seven generations, he had the most docile, laid back, pleasant animals you could possibly imagine. And they all turned their coat the color of golden retrievers.
Wow.
And so he found that there was this connection between the coat color and this ability to be docile and gentle. And he was perplexed. Why should there be this correlation? So then he went to a biologist, a cell biologist. And biologist he says, I can tell you exactly why. He says, the cell in your body that makes adrenaline has the same basic structure as half a dozen other very similar molecules, one of which is melanin, the dark pigment. So if you throttle back the production of adrenaline, you throttle back the production of all the cousins, one of which is the dark pigment. So you end up with the lighter colored coat and several other, the ears go, the floppy ears, you don't get the ears perked up, they flop down, and you get a half a dozen related phenomenon that all go with low levels of adrenaline, one of which is you're not very athletic. You can't do a spurt. So I was never going to be any good at athletics because I couldn't get an adrenaline spurt, So what happens is you go indoors and you do something you're good at, which is brain work, intellectual work. And so you end up with comedians and scientists and writers who all have the same trait, that they're no good at physical activity, outdoor activity, and they burn in the sun. So they choose the intellectual activities, the indoor activities, and they get good at that. So Darwin was a redhead, Galileo was a redhead, Socrates was a redhead, King David was a redhead, the McGonagall sisters were redheads. So you have all these redheads who end up doing what they're really good at, which is academic work or literary work or artistic work. And I wrote a whole blog about that, including the cell biology, the connection to cell biology.
Wow. I'll let Heiner go first, and then I want to add to that.
Yes, you caught me on the way on the bike. It was so exciting. We invited her 22 years ago for the Expo 2000 in Hanover, as she was so much in genuine creativity and games and video. So I'm fully subscribing to that. But I want to tell you something which really caught my mind about red-headed people. It was a colleague, later boss of mine, in the mid-70s in Arabia. He had his first boy raised in Arabia. I think it was late 60s, early 70s, and he was red-haired. So he was a crazy guy, architect, doing the planning for Mecca, but he was the architect of the king. So he lived in Riyadh, and when his first son was born, I mean, British architects, very, how do you say, breathtaking, breaking walls. So his wife gave birth to a red-headed boy. And all the Arabs were totally, how do you say, oh, this is dangerous. He cannot survive. He might be an albino or whatever names you know. So they overprotected the women and the boy for the first 3 or 6 weeks or maybe 2 months, I don't know. So anyway, he was traveling the world and he was special, but the women had to cope with a red-headed boy in a nomadic society. So after maybe 2 months, she felt like she had to go to the market. Some women want to buy some black paint for whatever, or some red things for the lips, or whatever they want to buy, or shirts,
Cosmetics.
or whatever. So she was really pressed into leave with the other women to the market, which is a 1 hour way. I mean, long distance. We're talking here about the 60s. So she was really feeling like she has to leave the boy to the old women. And she was very hesitant, and it took her really some pains to finally decide she will not stay at home anymore, but leave the child. So she's walking, you know, the women have to walk together. They cannot walk alone. and maybe after half an hour, she has like a stroke and she's running back, which is impossible, but she did it. And she went home to her place to find the old women taking the boy by the legs and putting the boy into a big bowl of henna to paint the boy red. You see the Arab make a lot of skin painting, but they had the tradition only to paint your red hair guys dark that can survive the sun. What I'm just saying has a lot of implications, and I can tell you 10 more stories of one of the guys or my bosses I was working with in the 70s. But it was just something I was compelled to tell you about. I have a meeting in 5 minutes and I have to run, but I think we should save the red hairs. They are endangered species.
Yep.
Well, I just want to add to what Barry was saying. I just want to, so 90% of what you said, I think is really something there, but I want to caution you to not take that extra step and say because of the way you do things, because one of the things that's very different about you and I are the way we process and feel emotions. And that's going to have other implications along the way. So like I get the inside part and all of that. I hate my whole life. I always loved being with people. I was a social butterfly. But I also believed I couldn't dance. I don't like to dance in public. I just don't. I'm very uncomfortable. But yet in the therapy that I used on myself, that I believe very strongly in, I've been dancing maybe 3 hours a day. It's a different kind of dance. So I think that has something to do with the processing of emotions and movement that somebody like you wouldn't need or wouldn't respond the same way. The other thing is, I don't remember the statistics or the specifics, but I know that a lot of addicts are redheaded. And I know redheaded boys have a lot of behavioral issues. So there's other things in there. So I'd be careful to go really slow on the parts that fit that theory. Who's Jar Jar Binks?
It's a character in Star Wars. He's the awkward, goofy, nerdy, lanky character in one of the episodes of Star Wars.
It's like, dancing is such a basic primitive art that it's just so sad that we don't have it. And somebody, yeah. It has really saved my life. It has really saved my life. And it's helping me lose all the weight that I gained, which is even more exciting because that really bothered me. Is your hand up, Heiner, or is that from before?
I think it's from before.
Before.
I think I can lower his hand for you. Let me just see if I can do that. I think I have the power to do that. Yes, I do.
Okay. Anyway, I'm feeling really tired, so I need to take a rest. Yesterday, I found some stuff and I've been processing so many emotions. I cried so much that I had a migraine for like 10 hours, was throwing up all day, and I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to drink some water and lay down on the couch and avoid that. But I'll listen in the background.
Smart move. Now Joshua's on. Your turn.
Hello, I'm trying to entertain this little one. She's getting bored.
Hi, little one.
Say hi.
Look at that smile. And nope, she's back. Froze for a second there. She's a cutie.
Yeah, she wants to type on the computer, and she was actually touching everything on the screen while I was making yerba mate. Yeah, what do you call him? Big Dirty? Oh, okay. Everything is baby now, Barry.
She's starting to have real words.
Yeah, she's got real words, but she listens more than she says the same word over and over again on purpose so that when she talks, it has more like oomph.
Uh-huh.
So she'll just say, right now everything's baby or
Baby.
bubba. And then
Baby.
before it was Guga for Google.
Yeah.
Google. Oh, you said Google really well that time. Say it again. Google. Yeah, say it. Google.
Google. Google? Google. Giggle.
See what I mean? She could say it. She just doesn't want to.
Can you giggle?
You know how to laugh?
Aha.
You know how to laugh?
Notice the alliteration. Ha ha, giggle, Google. A lot of alliteration. Saying the same syllable twice in a row. That's very common. That's how you get patterns. Ha ha. He he. Hi hi. Ho ho. Hoo
You know how
hoo.
to laugh?
Heidi 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 ho.
Do you see what she's doing, Barry, on purpose?
She's turning away from the camera.
Yeah. She's kind of like I'm starting to realize she's very like aware of the camera and aware of like timing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, self-aware.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because she's my flash went off by mistake. I turned on the video and the light flashed on and I wasn't trying to put the light on, but then all of a sudden she just looked at the camera and like did her whole, yeah, that one right there. That's the one.
She's very impressive.
Say hi to Barry. See, that's Barry. Look how I
Hi.
make his face big.
Hi. Hi.
I think that means like, what are you doing? Like, what are you up
Oh my
to,
God.
Barry? What up?
I'm saying hello. Hello.
She wants to know if you want a drink of water.
Oh, thank you.
After we drink, what do we say? Go, 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 go.
Beneath.
It's funny to watch her interact with other people, Barry. What's he doing?
I just spilled my coffee all over myself.
Oh no, you okay? Sorry,
Yeah, I
Barry.
didn't realize, I thought it was empty. I gotta go get a napkin.
Barry was drinking and the coffee spilled on his face.
I thought it was empty, but it wasn't.
You okay?
See what I did? I spilled it on myself.
I see that. Did you see that? Oops, I think he was trying to entertain you and then he spilled the coffee. What do you think of that?
There you go. Well, I just have to wash this shirt real quick before it stains. Hi.
Can you say hi, Barry?
Hi, Pac-Man.
You call him Pac-Man or Barry? Okay. She's trying to touch your face. You want to touch his nose? That's your nose. You want to touch Barry's nose? Yeah, tell him. He's actually listening to you.
Look at that smile.
Now she says Google, Barry. Did you hear that?
Google. Giggle. Google. Giggle.
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 Whoa, don't fall. Yep. Life of a 1-year-old.
There you go. Well, she
Oh,
has
really?
solved the very first problem in freshman calculus, how to stand upright without falling over.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that because she just stepped on my foot and almost fell. And
Yeah.
she's really tired right now. So
Yeah.
she's sort of like, the fact that she's really mastering the walking, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy.
Well, the brain actually has to real-time solve the classical problem in freshman calculus, the inverted pendulum problem.
Yep.
And
And
it's
the
amazing how
daddy smack 'em problem.
Right.
But yeah, it's really difficult to do what she's doing. I'm very impressed with it.
Well, not that many animals can stand upright on 2 legs and not fall over. It takes quite a bit of information processing to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, and at the different degrees and levels. Like I've been around kids, but I never saw every step of the learning to walk process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and each day it's like,
I mean, just teaching a robot to do that, coding up the calculations to stand upright and walk, that's a really hard problem in freshman calculus. To do the calculations
Yep.
needed to do that.
yes. You want to keep talking? Here. Come here. Sorry about that. So how you been? Everything good with you, Barry?
Well, I'm, my age, it's life in the slow lane. I'm home most days of the week and, trying to find things to do to keep myself occupied without overtaxing my aging brain.
Are you finding them? What are you doing these days?
Well, like I say, most days I'm home and the traffic on the social networks has been declining rather systematically. So there's long periods where there's nothing happening. So I've been trying to find other things to attend to besides engaging with people on the social networks. One of the things I've been spending a lot of time watching is a YouTube channel where these two really smart guys solve really hard logic problems. Every day they
Together or the group setting?
No, they alternate. They don't live together, so each one records roughly a half an hour to an hour of solving a hard logic problem and posting it on YouTube. So there's at least 2 videos a day from these 2 guys. And occasionally the problems are easy enough that I can also solve them, but more often than not, they're beyond my level. I'm lucky to be able to follow
Is that
them.
teasing your brain? Is it is it fun? Hey,
It's more fun for them than it is for me.
okay.
I used to get a lot of pleasure out of solving hard problems. And for some reason or another, as I age, the pleasure of solving hard problems also kind of subsides. It's work and you don't get the emotional satisfaction that I used to.
I'm listening. I'm just putting her in a place where she can, instead of tilting my back over, she can.
Yeah.
If it hangs up, I'll come right back on. But she just likes to touch the keyboard.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's periods of where things get boring and lonely. And since I'm inside almost all day, almost every day, it's life in the slow lane. And I nap a lot. Stacy's back.
I just came on to tell you, if you want to do some writing, I finished my creation story, like my fictional character. So if you want to add to it, mine's all done. It's kind of cool. We could work on that.
Are you going to publish it someplace like Medium or someplace?
I was dropping it. I was on to do new things. I'm like right now I want to go over to the church across the street.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you want to do something, I'm up for that. That would be fun. But I'm not looking to. I'm not forcing people to do anything anymore. It's there.
On Mattermost or Messenger or someplace, Medium, someplace is convenient, and I'll look at it when it's up.
The thing is, I can just in a paragraph tell you what it is, and then you could just write your own. You could write your own character.
Oh, okay.
That was the idea. The idea was to create something that people could do the same way I sent you that Anastasia story.
Right.
That was for that. So this is a different story, a little bit of fiction thrown in, but it goes along what I was saying about Jane McGonigal and the idea of looking for the signs. And so you could just write your own.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah, you know that I have these Muppet characters, my alter egos. I already have a whole bunch of them.
Well, I know you have Molten.
Molten is closest. Molten is to me as Kermit the Frog is to Jim Henson. It's almost exactly the same person. Then I've got Barsoom Torque, anthropologist from Mars, and Gastron Bombison, the villain character, and a bunch of others.
Okay, so I had a few also, but one of them is Rose. So Rose is the Mother Earth character.
Okay.
But then there was we'll talk.
Okay.
I can't, too much for my head. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to have this little collection of Muppet characters who were my alter egos. And I would write dialogues, between Molten and Barsoom Torque and Gastron Bombison and some of the other characters just to cover all sides of some issue that was in the zeitgeist of the day.
Did you make the characters, Barry, or?
Yeah, I mean, I invented the characters, although not out of whole cloth. Sometimes they were suggested by other people's comments. So, so I developed the characters, but I didn't necessarily come up with the idea to develop them. Other people may have suggested something that prompted me to create a storybook character, a Muppet character.
I apologize. I turned on the iPhone to hope that she would get distracted with it. Now she's just freaked out about it. It's a little game for kids where the little character like repeats back what you say.
Oh, echo.
Yeah, it's like an echoey, but then it's got little quirks and it's freaking her out. So she ran away from it.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It's really hard to know what's going to engage somebody and intrigue them, what's going to alarm them. It's really hard to anticipate that.
That's what I'm finding.
Just going to wait for you to unfreeze here. Still frozen.
I think I froze, Boops. I froze. I think I'm back.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, back momentarily. Oh, no. Joshua frozen. Oh, now you're back. Now you're back. So is Heiner. I'm not hearing your voice, Joshua.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. If you could hear me, I was saying that she has there's a Roomba robot like that vacuums. And it still is very, she can't figure out if she likes it or doesn't like it. So at first she thought it would run her over. Yeah. You want to chase the robot or have the robot chase you? I'm just kidding. It's not going to happen. No, you don't want to? Oh boy. It's a strange kid. All of a sudden she says, no, I don't want to. And I've never heard her say that in my life.
Wow. Picking up the words.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really enjoyed you. I finally have my meeting in the chess cabinet. And I really would like your daughter to teach me to walk. This is my message for the day. Josh and Barry, take care.
Okay, there you go. There's your first lesson.
There you go.
Good to see you, Heiner.
Ambling. She's
Yeah.
ambling.
I wish I can check and see if actually I think hold on one second. I'll be back. Sorry, it was one of those mornings, Barry, where QCell is on a conference call. And I guess, hey, you go sleep. So anyway, but I wanted to talk to you. Hey, shh.
Look,
Which
That-
one? Yeah.
that one. Look at that one.
I think it's the bunnies outside is what she wants. What is it? The bunnies?
She's pointing up in the sky, though. The bunnies aren't up in the sky.
Yeah, she's pointing over at the door. Yeah, it's the door. It's the bunnies. We can go see if they're out there. We'll go check. But anyway, there's some really exciting stuff in the science world that's coming out with protein folding and receptors. And I'll send you a paper if you're interested in it.
Yeah, I hear the AIs are getting very good at the protein folding calculations.
I think it's more just helping scientists do papers they were trying to do before. So it's not so much about the AI as much as just whatever they're doing. There's like, I have a paper from 4 different universities that's about receptors in plants, but it's just really interesting science going on. But hey, what was that noise? I've never heard. Yeah, okay. Never heard that noise before. What was that? Yeah, I'm trying to hold you and an iPad and open the door at the same time. Okay. You want to come with us, Barry? I don't know if I'm still on.
Yeah, that's a lovely door. A really nice cut glass.
Thanks. Yeah, the people, actually, it's funny. The people that built this house were cult leaders of some sort. This house was like a cult house.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, the neighbors told us they used to have these meetings here. It's like a meeting house. So I don't know. I call it the cult of the penis because this weird thing up here looks like a penis or something.
Oh, yeah, I see the point. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know who the people were that built this house, but
Well, that's a good theory, but it also could be a fallacy.
yeah, it could be. Or I mean, they were Christian for sure. Yeah.
You didn't get the pun, did you? Could be a fallacy.
A fallacy. Yeah, is it a fallacy? Sure.
Could be a phallus. See?
I got the phallus part. I didn't get the C part.
Fallacy. It's a fallacy.
It's a fallacy. It's yeah, it's interesting how many little miniature like cults are out there of 70 or 100 people that exist that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, from eco villages to sex cults or just you name it. There's so many weird little or
Yep.
Comic-Con cults.
Yep.
People that, yeah. I was just hearing my friends all getting excited because it's Comic-Con time. So they're all talking about the Marvel universe. And I went and looked and there's all these new movies coming out in that world. And they're all arguing about, did they do that on purpose? Does that follow this timeline? And it's just really weird. Like how many people are trying to adhere to what story and all agree on the stories that they're telling.
Yeah, narratives. There's this whole culture of spinning narratives to shape public opinion away from the ground truth.
There's no bunnies out here, but I'm showing her a lizard on the porch. I don't know if she sees
Staring
it.
at something there.
Yeah, that's the lizard.
Lizard. That's a hard word to say, lizard.
Can you say that word?
Lizard? I don't think so.
Can you say it?
Lizard's
Say
hard to say.
lizard.
A lizard with a
Can
gizzard.
you say it? Lizard. She's so annoyed at me these days, Barry.
Why is she annoyed at you?
Just because, you know, she's trying to get her autonomy because she just learned how to walk and I'm always picking her up and kissing
Oh.
her and she's like, oh, get off me. And I'm always touching her hair and doing
Yeah.
stuff like, look at, see that look?
Yeah.
She's just like,
Pinch your
"Come on."
cheek. Right.
She's-
She doesn't pinch your cheek back.
Oh, she does. She's looking for the silicone gel and the quarter that was on this little stand here
Uh,
that I have to move from her because she'll put it in her mouth.
the laboratory. The laboratory.
Yeah, she's a little scientist, Barry. I think she's just curious about. I know. What did I put in there? What was that? That was a silicone packet. What is it? Let's go look at it. Here, let's look. See this?
We're a little scientist.
Now she's got it, and then she wants to know what's inside of everything, and
Mhm.
like she flips her toys around and tries to turn the on and off switch instead of playing with the buttons on them.
Yep.
So, yep. Here, say what you want to say. Yeah. Bye, lizard. Did he go away? He's right there. So yeah, there's really, I feel like we've made leaps and bounds in this AI, machine learning, whatever you call it. And it's really
Yeah.
starting to pay off in different industries and colleges. And it's starting to become useful and practical to where certain hypotheses and inferences that people had, they can do certain papers a lot faster. And I'm watching science just, I mean, everyone, have you seen all these new YouTube channels or just different talks about what the James Webb has found with different galaxies just in the last few weeks?
Yeah, the pictures are fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I think it was Z38 or something, this galaxy that's supposed to be really, really far away.
Yeah,
I haven't had
just yesterday or day before, they found the farthest galaxy so far. The
Yep.
newest, farthest. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're analyzing the information. I'm saying they're putting it out. There's people that are putting it out publicly, and that's what's getting me excited is when all this type of data from all different industries and different places is put out publicly and open sourced, how many people get to work on it? To me, that is AI. That's artificial intelligence. Everyone crowdsourcing all of this science.
And spectral analysis, which still has to be done in the lab, is very powerful.
Say again?
Figuring out what molecules are responsible for the spectral signatures of things.
Yep.
Looking for signs of methane and water and whatever.
Speaking of that, did you see?
Oh, froze. Waiting for you to unfreeze. It's going to be 20 seconds.
World War II.
So, did you see? And then you froze. Did you see?
Oh, sorry. This is terrible. I should let you go. I'm sorry. I'm torturing you. Did you see the Veritasium's latest episode? I don't know if you follow.
I follow him, but I don't watch every episode, and I don't think I've seen a recent one of his. This is
Okay.
Derek, right?
Yeah, the last one was he's gotten very high quality, and it was sponsored by a company called Ren. So it was quite the high production value. But it was about nitrogen. Go ahead.
Nitrogen. Okay. No, I haven't seen that one.
It's really good. It's the scientist that isolated the nitrogen in order to use it for fertilizers in the 1900s.
Oh, I did see that one. This is the guy who got the Nobel Prize, and everybody thought he didn't deserve it because he also invented Zyklon B.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did see that one. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and I thought the end was pretty interesting, where he's, you know, everything is a tool. Everything is a double-edged sword. Everything in science can kill you or create utopia.
Yep. Yeah, that's
What's that noise?
knowledge for good and evil. Yep. Use it for good and use it for evil.
Sorry, this kid is something. She's tuned both of us out, and she's just going. All right, Barry, I'm gonna stop trying. I tried. I can't have a conversation with her. It's not possible with my internet going out.
All right. Well,
I tried. I tried. I tried. Did you?
Bouncy, bouncy.
La, 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 la. Okay, well, at least you learned to sing today. And she's blowing bubbles in her mouth. All right, say goodbye to Barry. Say bye-bye. Yeah, I don't know. All right, well, hope you have a great Saturday. I'll
Take care. Have a good one.
get on tomorrow. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. Cheers.
Okay. In the meantime, I think I'm going to try to get some of the coffee off of my shirt. So I'm going to pause my video for a few minutes here. Okay, got some of this spilled coffee mopped up a little bit. Well, let's see what time it is here. Well, it's 1 o'clock. So Sam, if you're listening, it's 1 o'clock and everybody else is signed off. So I think I shall, let me see what kind of powers I have. I think I will save the chat. And then I will stop the video and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. And I don't know if let me just see if I can end the session or not. No, I can only leave the meeting on my own. So I am going to stop the recording. Oh, Heiner's back. Maybe. Or not. He is back. Are you there, Heiner? He's connecting to audio. Let's see if Heiner gets connected here. I'll give it a few minutes to see if Heiner comes back. And then if not, I'm going to stop the recording and end the video. And then get all this spilled coffee off of me. All right, it looks like Heiner is not coming back. So I am I'm going to end it. So first I will stop the recording if I can. Actually, I don't think I can. I don't have the power to stop the recording. So I guess I shall just leave. Bye-bye.